Ambassador Robert King, former United States Special Envoy for North Korean human rights, assumed the position during a period of transition.
The North Korea Human Rights Act, which we adopted in late 2004, called for the designation of a special envoy for North Korea human rights, somebody who would be in the State Department who would have responsibility for focusing attention on the human rights. In 2008, at the end of the Bush administration, just before the election, the Congress extended the North Korea Human Rights Act but made changes.
This bill reauthorizes and makes minor revisions to the North Korean Human Rights Act of 2004. That law captured the strong bipartisan consensus in favor of promoting human rights, transparent humanitarian assistance, and refugee protections for the people of North Korea.
The special envoy was to have the rank of ambassador, which required Senate confirmation. And this was an effort to upgrade the importance of the human rights issues that we were trying to focus on. In 2008, Congressman Lantos had passed away. Tom Lantos was my boss for 25 years on Capitol Hill. I was his chief of staff. I also served at the same time in the last several years as staff director of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. I continued to serve as the staff director of the Foreign Affairs Committee until the end of the year, but decided that it was time to move on. With the change in administrations that came with the election of Barack Obama, I decided I was going to try to find a position in the administration since there would be a new chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. I was looking for some things in the State Department that might be interesting, and State Department Career Foreign Service officer who had worked with the Foreign Affairs Committee was on the Korea desk, and there was a search to find someone who was the right person for the Special Envoy for North Korea Human Rights. With the new Obama administration appointees, there was sufficient interest that appointments were being held up by the Senate. In balance, Secretary Clinton was under some pressure to come up with somebody that could fill the position for North Korea human rights. It wasn't just finding somebody to fill the job, you wanted somebody who also understood Congress. And because of my congressional background, because of the fact that I had been involved in the drafting and adoption of the North Korea Human Rights Act, several people thought I was the ideal candidate. I talked with Ambassador Stephen Bosworth, who was the special representative for North Korean issues for Secretary Clinton. We had a good conversation. I told him what the congressional concerns were and why I was the ideal candidate. Fortunately, he agreed and made the recommendation to Secretary Clinton, and Secretary Clinton asked me if I would accept the position. I was happy to do so, and I looked forward to dealing with North Korean issues again.
When Ambassador King assumed the role of Special Envoy, he used his unique position to coordinate efforts to advance North Korea's human rights.
Having the rank of ambassador with Senate confirmation gave me enough status and stature that I could sort of reach out anywhere in the State Department and also anywhere outside the State Department with U.S. government agencies and with non-government organizations to try to work together and coordinate what we were trying to do on foreign policy. Most of the work that I did and the staff that I worked with were at on the Korea desk in the Asia Bureau of the State Department. This is the regional bureau that has the responsibility for sort of the overall policies of these areas. In addition, I worked to encourage broadcasting information flow into North Korea, and this involved an Undersecretary of State. I worked very closely with, at the time, the Broadcasting Board of Governors, which was involved with Radio Free Asia, with Voice of America. I worked very closely with the International Organizations Bureau in the State Department. We spent a lot of time dealing with United Nations issues and working through the United Nations to put pressure on North Korea in terms of its human rights activity. I very much think that the Special Envoy is a critical part of our effort to press the North Koreans on human rights. Having someone who has the rank of ambassador, which is a big deal in the State Department and a big deal internationally in terms of being able to contact other countries and their foreign ministries. And having somebody who's there, who's in senior meetings, who's involved in senior discussions about how we deal with North Korea, it adds an important element of giving more emphasis to human rights than it would have otherwise.
As part of his duties, Ambassador King was sometimes called on to intercede in U.S. North Korean affairs.
I was able to go to North Korea in 2011. The United States had been asked by North Korea to provide humanitarian assistance to North Korea. The United States at the time was willing to consider that possibility. We felt like we needed to go there to examine the situation in the countryside and also talk about our concerns about being able to monitor the distribution of any humanitarian assistance that we provided to make sure that it got to those that were most in need. And so I was the person that was tasked to go to North Korea. The North Koreans were a little leery about inviting me. As the North Koreans told me, "We like you, Ambassador King, we don't like your title." Special Envoy for North Korea Human Rights was not something that they thought was helpful. But the North Koreans also were very anxious to have assistance from the United States, partly because they needed the aid, partly because it was important symbolically. We had a number of very positive conversations. We explained to the North Koreans our congressional requirements if we provided assistance, how that had to be monitored, how it had to be assessed, how we had to determine need. And the North Koreans, I think, came to understand what our concerns were. One of the things they did, an American citizen being held at the time, Eddie Jun, an American who had been living and working in China but had been going in and out of North Korea doing business, had been arrested, had been held by North Korea for about 7 months. And one of the things that I did while I was in Pyongyang was to make the request of the North Koreans that Eddie Jun be released, that he was a good man, that there was obviously some misunderstanding in terms that had led to his being detained. One of the things that we were able to do was secure his release.
We are very happy to report that Mr. Jun, the American citizen who's being held in Pyongyang, has been released. We're also delighted that within a day or two he'll be able to be back with his wife and family.
When we left North Korea, we were able to take Eddie Jun with us on the flight. He and I sat across the aisle from each other on the flight back to Beijing. That was a very satisfying experience to be able to do that. And to see Eddie Jun, one of the things that was very nice is his family sent a Christmas card to me a few months later. He had his first grandchild had been born in Southern California. And they sent me a picture of the grandchild and a wonderful letter and expressing thanks and appreciation. I'd like to think that it was me, that it was all my diplomatic skills. The North Koreans wanted to make a point and wanted to show that they were being helpful, and they released him, and I happened to be the person that was there. But it was a great honor for me to be able to do that and to see that man who needed to rejoin his family able to leave North Korea and be able to do that.